find your purpose and make sure that understand your why. Because if you understand your why, you'll make those decisions faster. So if you're not happy with an individual relationship or you're not happy with a job, change it so that you're focused on yourself.
Dr. Kevin McGarry is the founder of McGarry Leadership and the CEO of Leading 360. He's dedicated to empowering leaders worldwide unlock their full potential. Kevin's leadership experience includes serving as a national sales manager in both asset management and annuities for Fortune 500 companies. He holds a doctorate in leadership, a master's in coaching, and earned his undergraduate degree in finance from the University of Connecticut. He joins me today on Uncorking a Story to talk about his career and his new book, Lead with Purpose, a story about leading in your personal and professional life. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Kevin.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to it. Thanks.
I'm happy to have you here, Kevin. And I'm curious, where does your story as an author begin?
If you go back, my story as an author, I think may be a little bit different than many authors. I started my journey towards where I am today as an author, really as a reader, someone who was just an avid reader, someone in the business community who had a growth mindset. And I've always said, how do I get better than I was yesterday? How do I improve upon what I'm doing? And over the course of a 30-year career in financial services, I worked with financial advisors and clients, and I was always curious, always asking questions. What drives an individual to be successful in their careers? What drives them to pursue their own purpose and goals in life. And as I looked throughout the course of my career, I was also looking for books and pathways to learn. So I would reach out to leaders, read books that they recommended, Barnes and Noble. I also traveled a ton. So for those that are in airports a lot, Hudson News was a good friend of mine. Stop in and see what was the new book of choice that was being recommended. And my kind of pathway in reading was I liked the books of John Gordon, Energy Bus, little Jocko Willick's Extreme Ownership, Simon Sinek. In some of his stories, and really it was to me that mindset of understanding where I've got a story that was entertaining and then drove towards something I could actually implement in my own life, whether it's personal or professional, and that really drove me towards where I ended up getting a doctorate in leadership and realizing that, like as many folks that have ever written a doctoral thesis, not a lot of people read them. And it's a lot of information. Mine's about 550 pages and a lot of data, a lot of insights. And I wanted to be able to relay that out to individuals so they could actually become more effective leaders. And so I took my mindset of reading, right? And how do I bring that into a story that others can enjoy, whether it's, for a personal, professional opportunity to say, here's a business fable that ideally for me, I wanted to write a book that you could pick up at Bradley Airport and fly down to Atlanta or Dallas, be able to finish the book and it be entertained, but also have some insights that you can actually use as a leader. And so that was kind of the inspiration to my story, if you will.
I used to love, I traveled a lot for business as well, certainly pre-COVID, and I love going to Hudson News, picking up a book, reading it, and finding some nugget I could just drop in a meeting, just to sound intelligent. I would highlight and all that stuff. But I'm curious. You mentioned this sort of starting with perhaps a doctoral thesis, and I can't think of anything more different than an easily consumable book or story. And then there's, the other side of the spectrum or continuum, a doctoral thesis, which is, text heavy, data heavy, probably uses a lot more words than needs to. And it looks at very complex things, whereas, books, should be a little bit more simple. I'm curious, how was that journey going from, writing for academia to writing for, more of a mass audience? I'm just curious as to what that journey was like for you.
For me, it was almost a journey that started in telling stories to the mass audience to then learn to write in academic format and then coming back to the mass audience. And I say that from a standpoint of over my career, I've always been in sales. So I was presenting and working with um, individual investors or financial advisors. So the mass audience of how do you, and what we were looking at is retirement. And so telling stories and being able to bring anecdotes of how do you actually save today for retirement in the future and understand, what is it that an individual might need to do to understand the capital markets. And so that to me was kind of where I started. The challenge for me was as I started in a master's and then a doctorate was to learn how to write in that academic space. And it's much more challenging. There's more it's more data heavy. You have to do tremendous research on finding both sides of a story and being able to, understand one point of view, the counterpoint to it, and bring them to compare and contrast those. And that process to get a doctoral thesis took about 5 years, but it was a lot of writing, rewriting, and going into text heavy, to your point, data heavy insights. But then what I found was to come back to that story of being able to tell it in a way that resonated with individuals was to find it, going back to the anecdote again. And for me within Lead with Purpose, it was, I had to find what was the story going to be based on, and it ended up being a softball coach, and that allowed me to bring it back down to the average individual who's, whether it's within their community, within business, within their own personal business or Fortune 500 company, to be able to make a connection to the story that then brings out the core themes of the doctoral research as well.
So yeah, I mean, you had to learn how to write for academia, then you had to unlearn it, right?
Yeah,
In order
that's
to put
exactly
this book
right.
together. I'm curious, five or so years for the doctoral thesis. How long did it take you to write Lead with Purpose?
Lead with Purpose. So if you think about what it took me to get to be able to even start writing it, the 5 years of the doctoral thesis I look at as the precursor and the knowledge to be able to start the book itself. So that 5 years of research to understand what it does it truly take to be a highly effective leader. And then from there, it was when I first started putting pen to paper, it was I would say a little over 1 year from the point I started to the point where I had an actual copy in my hand, printed book.
Yeah, and that's actually, not it's not a huge timeline there. I mean, certainly the 5 years of it brewing in your head,
Yeah.
but from putting pen to paper to having a copy, that's some people might say, wow, that's pretty fast. What helped you along the way in terms of getting that story out?
To actually writing it, you're saying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
To me was starting to tell the story in conversation. So I would kind of test as you go through the book. There's different stories that are all actually based on actual stories that happened over my career, and so I would begin to have conversations with people about the different themes within the book, tell maybe an anecdote, see how the story resonated as I talked to individuals. So I was kind of testing out the different chapters of the book as I talked to cohorts, individuals within business and just friends and family to say, hey, let me tell you this story and see if it resonated. Some I was, pull back. Others I would dig a little deeper into, and so that was kind of the part of that story of being able to write. And then it was, as kind of understanding what's the process in writing too. So it's not only just writing, and that's the one thing that I learned in writing my first book was writing the book is literally half the process. Which I didn't realize how much happened after you actually said, "Oh, great, I'm done writing the book." And then there's so many more gates and so many more things you have to do beyond that to actually publish a book.
It's really like a lesson in product management, like putting a book together, especially for, for those of us who have published independently, without one of the big publishers behind you, it's you're getting your story out, right? So that is sort of your product. But to get it to market, there's all sorts of stuff you need to do, right? You've got to price it the right way. You got to figure out your distribution strategy. You got to put a good looking cover on it. So that's you got to think about your packaging. It gets back to the 4 Ps or the 6 Ps of advertising. So and then you think, hey, a lot of people think that writing is the hard part until they have to start promoting it and getting it out there, and then you realize like, oh, this writing could be the easy part. The hard part is actually spreading the word about it and getting it into people's hands.
It is. What I've found is, for me, it was a lot of research on understanding the different pathways of whether you go through a traditional publisher. I ended up going into a lot of conversations with McGraw-Hill, then going into some of the Greenleaf and kind of mid-size hybrid publishers. And then I finally decided to publish it on my own. But that in and of itself, and the research of how can you publish a book was educational for me, but also to make the right decision of what am I using this book for? How do I want to get it out to market? And then to your point, now it's, as I've published it, it's about getting that message out and being able to get the story in front of as many folks as possible so that they can hear. You kind of want to read the book, but then also at the end of the day, my goal is to help others become better and more effective leaders. And that's really what's driven within the book. But you still, in order for that to happen, you still got to get it in front of more and more hands and more readers.
I want to come back to the objectives you have for the book in a moment, but I realize we really haven't told anybody what the story is about. So what can you share with us about Lead with Purpose?
Yeah, Lead with Purpose, and I'll tell you the story itself, and then the basis behind it. And so the story starts with the main character, Eddie. And Eddie is in aerospace, and he's a sales manager who is at work struggling to lead his team. He's got some issues with culture. He has some issues with accountability and driving. He's really struggling to get his team to be highly effective. At home, he's struggling with his family, struggling with his spouse and his daughter. And he's asked to actually coach his daughter's softball team. And so what happens is he decides to embark on this journey of coaching his daughter's softball team. And throughout the course of the book, he finds another mentor, a CEO who's a very highly successful business person and a state champion lacrosse coach. And this mentor gives him insights on how to lead not only at work, but also for his daughter's softball team. And through this story, it really just, he starts to implement effective behaviors and skills of highly effective leaders. And through that, he then becomes a better softball coach and a better leader, both in his personal life and at work. The entire story, as my wife says, it's a kind of an anecdote and a story about my own personal life, because it's I've been in sales leaders, and you always have a team that you want to do a little bit better. But I also I was inspired by coaching my own daughter's softball team as well. So it's kind of brings everything full circle.
And your daughter has a role in this book as well, doesn't she?
She does. She is an illustrator. And so somebody who's highly passionate about drawing, and she's been drawing for years. She loves softball. So she helped name the characters within the book and is inspired about one of the characters. But she also drew one of the pictures in the book, which gave her, as a 13-year-old, someone who she can actually go forward in her life and say, she's a published illustrator, and being able to kind of hold herself out as doing something maybe not a lot of folks have an opportunity to do. And so it was fun to include her into it, and obviously brought the family closer, as well as she's got a true part in the book.
What I like about the way you approached the storytelling in the book is, it's not just about leadership principles. It's not just another business book, but it does weave in something that's really relatable to the audience, which is, their personal lives, and sort of that division between who you are at work and then who you are in your family life. And yeah, I really do appreciate how you weave both of those together. And it's not just about, somebody winning in the boardroom. It's also about winning on the field and winning in life in general.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to accomplish with this is, and even in the title, lead with purpose. It's to me, it's what's your purpose as an individual? What do you want to accomplish in life? And so many folks either focus too much on work and you get that balance out of whack, or maybe they're less focused at work and highly focused at home. It's how do you find the balance and the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish for your own self? And everyone has a different purpose, but the book provides behaviors and skills that work, whether it's for your family, your community, or at work, to be more effective leader. And that's regardless of whether you're leading with a title or just leading because you're part of a team and you're a leader within your community or within your family.
I want to pivot to the purpose of the book for you professionally. A lot of people who listen to the show are aspiring authors themselves. Some people have the mistaken notion that they're going to write a book and become, financially independent as a result of writing that book. And yeah, certain there are some authors who make a living just writing, but most of us don't. Most of us keep our day jobs. What is your intention for this book?
Yeah. I'll take a step back into my doctoral thesis. And so for me, I did a doctoral thesis one so I could learn to lead more effectively. And then as I continued through the doctoral thesis, I said, I got so many great insights. I interviewed 250 C-suite to frontline leaders and 600 individual followers, people that have a boss or a leader. And I wanted to understand what is it that they truly view as a highly effective leader. And so for me, I said, all right, this research I think is highly impactful. I wanted to be able to communicate it effectively in a book. And then from a work standpoint, what I do with it for my own personal life is I'm then now with McGarry Leadership, actually coaching individuals in Fortune 500 companies. I talk to and present at universities to do talent development. And then I'm also working and coaching individuals from small businesses to individual leaders that are looking to improve and continue and enhance their own skill set. And so I'm using the book as kind of a baseline of how can you level set what are the skills and behaviors of leaders, and then how can I use it to be able to coach and be able to provide an avenue for others to actually become the most effective leader they can be. To your point, I'd love to make millions and millions of dollars off selling the book, but I also know the reality of being an author, and it's a challenge to continue to get traction. But what I found is the traction is for me bringing it out as I speak to individuals, and whether I do a keynote presentation somewhere or small groups, I'll bring the book out and be able to bring it to 100 leaders or 500 leaders at a clip or 10, and be able to share the story, but also share the themes and the process behind it as well.
Yeah, I mean, for you, it's not necessarily just about book sales, but it's also about having a calling card you can bring to,
Yeah.
and almost a point of differentiation you could bring to whatever organization is considering you for a keynote or a training program. And it's it's a good read, so I'm sure people will appreciate just having the book. What was the most challenging thing you found during the writing process?
The most challenging thing through the writing process I found was getting it, getting the stories themselves and how I wanted to tell the story. And in my mind, I was like, if I tell the story to another individual and then say, okay, how do I write this in a way that weaves effectively to Eddie in his avenue for softball to business, but being able to write it in a succinct and effective way so that the reader isn't missing part of the story. And so many times when you write, it's like you think you wrote it, it's in your head and what you mean. It's like trying to get everything that you actually want to say on paper so that someone who's never met me or never read the book before can read it and truly feel that they understand the story is highly effective as well. So kind of that connectivity and making sure it's a very smooth read.
Yeah, and that's something that we all face as authors is is this going to connect with the audience the way I want to make sure it connects with them. For me in the past, I've had beta readers look at some early early drafts of work just to people who I trust just to get a little bit of like focus group feedback on like is this working? What's not working? And that's what a good content editor will do that too. Kind of tell you like what's working, what's not working, what needs more, where you could dial things back, etc.
And just to add to that as well, I think the content editor definitely helped. But to your point, I had different beta readers where I would have individuals read chapters at a time and say, give me some feedback. And give you a perfect example, a neighbor of mine, he's an umpire in the NCAA. For the SEC, he'll ump for baseball. So I asked him to read it for more clarity around some of the nuances of softball. One, I coach softball, but it's also good to have somebody else with a different mindset of did that story resonate? Does that work from the umpire to the players and really kind of getting someone's perspective who's day in and day out in the baseball field, but also obviously connects to softball. Being able to have that, and then same thing on the business side, having folks that were in business um, that are leaders that could read it and then give me some additional feedback as well to say, hey, this resonates, this doesn't resonate. Here's an opportunity to say, how do you make this a more compelling story in different areas? And it allowed me to add some additional chapters, and it actually allowed me to take different portions of the book and consolidate them as well.
Yeah, I know the book's been out for a little while now. What has feedback been like? What are you hearing from readers, and is anything surprising you?
Feedback's been good. It's won a couple of awards lately, which has been fantastic. We won the Literary Titan Gold Book Award, which is always nice. And then we're starting to, and then we're also seeing some feedback from the readers. So here's what I'll tell you: the readers in the university level. So I kind of give you three different kind of categories of readers. University students, so undergrads and graduate students that have read it, have really come back and said this is a book that they can use as a guidebook to when they enter into corporate, how should they lead? But they've also said I can use this in colleges as they're leading different organizations. And then from a corporate standpoint, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies and different leaders, it has resonated with them as a way to say, one, it's a great read, and it's been something that they're like, you know what, some of these behaviors are different things that they know that they should do but haven't done effectively. So it's a good reminder to implement within their own leadership practices. And then I've also gotten some readers that have realized that the stories themselves were about them. And so you kind of hearing people that have read and said, hey, is this me? I'm like, the names have been changed to protect the innocent, but it is good to see the folks that acknowledge who they are within the book and being able to come back and really have the story in the book resonate with them to say, it's kind of cool to see those stories that happened over the course of a 30-year career be incorporated and those that actually acknowledge and say, this is a good way to kind of bring those theories to life.
I realize I'm talking to a leadership expert here, award-winning Dr. Kevin McGarry. What are some facts about leadership that the average person that would surprise the average person?
So facts about leadership, I think here's what I would say through my research and then obviously through third-party research, the number one item or behavior or skill, if you want, that a leader should invest in to their teams is does the leader have a vision for the career of the person on their team? This might seem intuitive, if you will. However, only 12% of employees say that their leader has a conversation with them on a regular basis about their career. And so what happens is if you as a leader sit down and have a conversation with your team member on a regular basis, regular meaning quarterly, about what do they want to do with their career? Did you put a development plan in place to help them actually accomplish um, their career vision? That will actually improve engagement significantly, improve trust within you and the leader. And so it's something that might not seem intuitive, but yet it's not that difficult. It's people just want to know that their leader cares and actually is there to help them accomplish their own career path, whatever that may be. It might be at the same company, it might be at a different organization, but being able to have a focus on a vision for your career is the number one and most important thing seen by all employees.
Yeah, I think about this time of year, right? First quarter, people are goal setting for the rest of the year. And I think there's a tendency just to focus on what the next 12 months is going to bring. Like, what are the things you want to accomplish over the next 12 months? But what you're talking about is, hey, what are the next thing? What are the things you want to accomplish, not just in the short term, but maybe 5 years down the line, or where do you want to end up in 10 years? And starting that conversation and helping people, put together, their, I almost said portfolio, but their platform for getting there is kind of what you're talking about.
When you think of it, and I think this is where it comes into play on a personal level and then in professional. Most professional conversations about your career happen at your annual review. Your annual review is maybe an hour long. You talk about, did you meet expectations or exceed expectations? And, why didn't I exceed expectations? Why did I meet? Why did I get a 2.5% raise instead of a 5% raise? In the last 5 minutes is that conversation. Oh, by the way, Mike, what did you want to do with your career? And it just it's completely kind of as almost, oh, by the way, where the conversation of being able to sit down and have a specific meeting that is all about where do you want to be 10, 15, 20 years from now? Where do you when you retire, what job do you want to retire from? That then allows a much more thoughtful approach to your career and your development. And think of it even from a family standpoint. We sit down on a yearly basis with our daughter and as a family and set yearly goals. And it can be as simple as, what do you want to accomplish this year? And so what I've found, the yearly goals change over time. When my daughter's 13, when she was 5, we sat down, her number one goal when she was 5 was to meet a unicorn. Right. So she didn't hit that goal. but as she goes this year, right, her goals are to place in a cross country meet, to place in a skiing race. And then then becomes, what is it that you want to do on a daily basis from a practice standpoint? She wants to, do exceptionally well in softball. So what does that really require from a practice standpoint, from a time commitment standpoint? And it allows for that, from a 13-year-old to kind of think further ahead than just, the weekend. It's, let me think of a year ahead and what do I need to do today to accomplish that? And it really helps to kind of push things forward to really allow folks to actually become and accomplish more than they ever thought possible, because it's not just, I don't have a goal. It's, hey, here's where I'm trying to get to. Where do how do you push your kids? How do you push your family? How do you push your employees to accomplish more than they ever thought they could possibly accomplish?
I mean, I think book number 2 is going to be a parenting book, Kevin. This is the first time I've heard people sitting down with their kids and doing goal setting. I mean, it does make sense, but then I'm thinking that, she probably has a couple of sales managers as parents.
That is very true. Like, we'll sit down every year and we'll review the goals from last year, what was accomplished, for each of us. What did we accomplish? What did we not accomplish? And then reset goals for this year. And so, it's simple things. One of the goals my daughter has this year is to get scuba certified. So she's, put some plans in place, and she hopefully, as long as she passes her open water, she'll have a scuba certification by the end of April. So it helps to kind of think a little bit ahead.
I can only imagine like what the conversation at her school is, right? So she's middle school, right? She said
Yeah, she's
13.
seventh grade.
Seventh grade. So, what did you do this weekend? I went to the water park. What did you do this weekend? Well, I had my annual review with my parents. They went through my key performance indicators. We knocked out some OKRs, and we pivoted on the growth plan for next year.
Yep, that's exactly it.
One of the ways I like to get to know my guests a little bit more is through some pop culture questions, Kevin. So I'm curious, when you were growing up, what were some of your favorite things to watch on TV?
Let's see, watch on TV. I would say, as a young kid, probably cartoons, the Jetsons. You get to a little bit older, the Seinfeld. So those would be the two that I would say, going back to kind of different things on TV I like to watch.
I got to say the Jetsons lied to us, right? I mean, completely lied. We should be in flying cars right now with little jetpacks on, and yet, we're still sitting in traffic on the Merritt Parkway.
I'll tell you what's interesting though is AI and the development of where everything is. You've got multiple humanoid robot companies coming out, Tesla, Figure AI, Abtronics. Like we're gonna have robots in the home like relatively soon. And you look at like the drones that are out there now, it's just a matter of time before, you have drones for personal use to bypass traffic and get where you want to go.
Yeah, I still want a flying car. I mean, look, I have one of those robots that sweeps the floor. I did a project for those guys. They paid me in a robot, but I want the flying car. I want the flying car. You mentioned Seinfeld. I have to ask, what do you have a favorite episode, or does a particular episode come to mind?
Wow, I'm trying to think. Just kind of one that comes to mind is when Kramer's repainting the highway, making it because he take
Right? Weren't they in the mail truck? Were they in the mail truck and they were like painting the highway?
painting lines. It's like this is the just making a nice wide, comfy highway.
I love the ones with there was one with Keith Hernandez, and then Jerry goes into like this parody of JFK with the second spitter. It turns out it was Roger McDowell. I don't know. It was funny stuff. What about music? What did you like listening to growing up?
Growing up, I like the Beastie Boys, little Bare Naked Ladies. Now it's more. I've kind of transitioned after living in Texas for a little while and moving back to the Northeast country.
Oh yeah, there's some good country out there. The new country is not like the old country.
That is true.
It is pretty good. I love me some Brad Paisley. He was supposed to play in Hartford last year and then like canceled his show.
Oh, no kidding.
Without any kind of explanation. It was just canceled. And I'm like, that not I was gonna go and missing it. But I am gonna go see Kenny Chesney at the Sphere in Vegas in May.
That'd be great.
So,
that'd be really good.
Looking forward to that. What is the best advice about writing you would pass on to somebody who wants to write a book?
Best advice. I would say the best advice is to spend the time and find out what's appropriate for you. Meaning, from a publisher's standpoint, is it going to a major publisher, a hybrid publisher, or self-publishing? And for me, looking at the overall cost and cost benefit analysis is to look and truly think about being an independent publisher and publishing on your own. One, because you're going to have the ability to market on your own, the ability to really have true control of the book itself, and to own all the distribution of that book. And so, if I look at, how do you go about it? How do you what's the best advice? One, tons of YouTube videos on how to go about the process, but spend the time on the publisher to understand which is the most appropriate and best option for yourself, and that you're going to get the best benefit from. My pathway was independent publishing, and I think that's probably the best for many publishers or many authors. That is.
Yeah. Yeah, you do have more control over the process, and you can control promotions, pricing. And you keep more of what you sell. And the trick is just nailing distribution. And there's ways of doing that as well. If you could go back in time and whisper some words of advice into the younger Kevin McGarry, maybe it's, think about you being the same age as your daughter. And maybe I'm just going to assume your parents weren't sitting you down having goal setting sessions, but because our parents' generation certainly didn't do that. But they just told us to get on our bikes and come home when it was dinner time.
That's exactly it.
I'm curious.
The sun goes down. That's it.
Yeah. What words of advice would you give your 13-year-old self?
I would say this, which is believe in yourself. Know that, your knowledge, your experience, and your dedication is going to be highly effective in your overall long-term success. Second is to take risks. Take risks above and beyond what you feel comfortable, because those risks are going to drive you to higher levels of success. And then finally, which is find your purpose and make sure that you understand your why. Because if you understand your why, you'll make those decisions faster. So if you're not happy with an individual relationship, or you're not happy with a job, change it so that you're focused on yourself and you're dedicated to your own inner purpose and your inner why to be able to actually be happy and be fulfilled from an overall life standpoint.
Very cool and wise words to your younger self, Kevin. Where can people learn more about you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, and then also at McGarryLeadership.com, which is where you can learn a little bit more about my consulting business. And then obviously on Amazon, you can also pick up Lead with Purpose directly on Amazon or at a local bookstore as well.
Very cool. I will be sure to put links to the book as well as to McGarry Leadership and your LinkedIn in our show notes so people can easily look those up. And Kevin, I'll say thank you for stopping by Uncorking a Story and letting me uncork yours.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.